Luke hadn't spoken to his sister Emma in nearly 3 years when the letter arrived. It came in a yellowed envelope with a wax seal, looking more like something out of an old Western than a modern legal document. The return address read, Grady & Sons, Attorneys at Law, Ellsworth, Kansas. He almost tossed it aside. Probably junk, he thought. But something about the name tugged at a dusty corner of his memory. Inside, the letter was crisp and formal. Their grandfather, Henry Callahan, long presumed dead or lost to time, had left behind a piece of land, a farm, somewhere in rural Kansas. And not just any farm. The one they used to visit as kids before everything fell apart. Luke stared at the paper, blinking slowly. He hadn't thought about that place in years. 2 states away in Denver, Emma sat on the floor of her small apartment, holding an identical letter with trembling hands. Her breath caught in her throat as she reread the words. You and your brother are the sole beneficiaries. The name of the town sent a chill down her spine. Ellsworth. She could still see the dusty road leading to the old barn, hear the creak of the front porch swing, smell the cornfields in the summer heat. She picked up her phone. It took a full minute of staring at Luke's contact before she hit call. He answered on the 3rd ring. Emma. Hey, she said, voice soft. You got the letter too? Yeah. A pause. So, what do we do? She asked. I don't know. It's just some old land, right? Probably falling apart. Maybe, but it's ours. Doesn't that count for something? Luke sighed. I guess. Before we dive into the dusty secrets of the farm's cellar, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible real-life discoveries that might just change how you see the world. A week later, they met at a diner halfway between their homes. The reunion was awkward. Luke wore oil-stained jeans and boots, his hands still smelling faintly of motor grease. Emma arrived in a blue cardigan and practical shoes, her hair tied in a loose bun. They hugged stiffly, like strangers mimicking a memory. Still allergic to cats? He asked. Still drink your coffee black? She shot back. He smiled. It was the first real one in a long time. They drove to Ellsworth in Luke's old Chevy pickup. The roads narrowed as the city faded behind them, replaced by wheat fields and abandoned silos. Emma pressed her forehead to the window, watching the flatlands roll by like a forgotten world. Luke kept his eyes on the road, both hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. You really think there's anything left of it? She asked. No idea. But I'm betting it's a dump. Even so, maybe it's worth seeing one last time. They arrived just before sunset. The sky burned orange over the endless horizon, casting long shadows across the gravel drive. The house stood like a ghost, weathered wood, sagging roof, windows boarded or broken. The porch leaned like it had 1 foot already in the grave. Emma stepped out first, gravel crunching underfoot. She walked slowly as if the air itself was thicker here. Luke followed, eyes scanning the property. Looks worse than I remember, he muttered. It's quiet. They unlocked the front door with a key the lawyer had given them. The hinges groaned in protest. Inside the air was dry and musty, thick with dust and disuse. Furniture lay draped in sheets like shrouds. Cobwebs hung from corners. The silence was so deep it felt like the house was holding its breath. Emma wandered into the living room, fingers brushing a shelf of old books. Luke opened a back door and stepped onto the porch, lighting a cigarette. Then came a low thud from beneath the floorboards. Emma froze. Did you hear that? Luke put out the cigarette. Yeah. They both stared at the old cellar door in the kitchen, rusted shut with thick chains. Something waited down there, something neither of them expected. The dirt road leading to the farmhouse grew narrower with every mile. Scraggly weeds scraped the truck's undercarriage, and fence posts leaned like tired men who'd long given up. The only sound was the hum of the tires over gravel and the wind rattling the dry cornstalks that hadn't been harvested in years. Emma leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. There it is. Luke slowed the truck to a crawl. The farmhouse rose from the land, like a memory refusing to die. Its weathered clapboards were bleached by sun and storm, patches of roof missing like torn pages from a forgotten book. The porch sagged, the steps crooked. A dead tree stood beside it like a sentinel with no one left to guard. "Still think this was worth the drive?" Luke muttered. Emma didn't answer. She opened her door and stepped out. The late afternoon heat clung to her skin, heavy with dust and the scent of dry earth. Luke followed, slamming the truck door with more force than needed. A cloud of birds burst from the barn roof in a flurry of wings. "I used to swing from that tire," Emma said, pointing at a rope that now hung frayed and limp. He gave a quiet nod. "You fell and chipped your tooth." She smiled faintly. "And you told me not to cry because Grandpa said this place only healed the brave." The front door creaked open before they reached it. Mr. Grady stood there, his blazer dusty, tie askew, holding a clipboard in one hand and a small tin box in the other. "Miss Callahan, Mr. Callahan, glad you made it." His voice was slow, polite, edged with exhaustion. "You'll find the paperwork in here." He handed the box to Emma. "Deed, tax documents, a few personal notes your grandfather left behind." Luke glanced at the door. "Did you already go inside?" "Just a quick walkthrough. House hasn't been touched in decades. You'll need repairs if you plan on staying." "Not staying," Luke said quickly. Grady raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's up to you two." "Legally, it's yours now. No mortgage, no liens, just history." With a nod, the lawyer stepped off the porch and walked to his car. The gravel shifted under his tires until silence returned, heavier than before. Inside, the farmhouse was exactly as they remembered and yet utterly unfamiliar. Time had wrapped everything in a soft decay, wallpaper peeled like old skin. A layer of dust dulled the once bright wooden floors. Emma ran her fingers over the back of a rocking chair. "This was Grandma's," she whispered. Luke kept moving, opening cabinets, testing floorboards with the heel of his boot. "She didn't leave much behind," he said. "No, she didn't." They moved through the rooms in silence. The kitchen smelled of rust and forgotten meals. A cracked window let in a thin shaft of sunlight. It landed on a small metal door in the corner near the pantry. Luke crouched. "This led to the cellar?" he asked. Emma nodded. "Used to be Grandpa's workshop down there." He tugged on the handle. It didn't budge. Chains wrapped around the door rusted tight with a heavy padlock still intact. "That's new," he said. "Maybe it's been locked since he disappeared." Luke leaned in, pressing his ear to the door. For a moment there was nothing. Then, faintly, maybe just his imagination, a sound, a low creak, a distant thud. He pulled back. Emma swallowed. "There's something down there." That night, they settled into two dusty mattresses in what used to be the guest room. The air was warm and still, the silence stretching long between them. Luke finally said, "If that cellar's locked, there's a reason. Maybe we just leave it." Emma stared at the ceiling. "Or maybe that's exactly why we open it." Outside, the wind shifted. The dead tree groaned softly. Tomorrow they would start digging through the past. Morning came with the dull hum of cicadas and the pale light of a Kansas sun rising behind a bank of clouds. Emma stood barefoot in the kitchen, nursing a cup of instant coffee. Luke was already outside, inspecting the perimeter of the farmhouse with the same scrutiny he gave to engines back at his garage. She stared again at the cellar door. The padlock, crusted with rust, looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The chain wrapped tightly through the old metal handle and bolted into a hook embedded in the wall. No key in the tin box Mr. Grady had left. No mention of the cellar in the documents. When Luke came back in, brushing dirt from his jeans, she pointed at it. "It's not just locked, it's sealed." He frowned. "Well, we didn't come here for a mystery. We came to check on the land and hopefully figure out how to get rid of this place." "You came to get rid of it," she said. "I came to understand it." He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a hammer from a rusted toolbox they'd found under the sink and knelt beside the door. With a grunt, he slammed the claw into the padlock. The metal rang out like a bell. "Careful," Emma warned. "It's not budging," he muttered. "Might need a bolt cutter." She crouched beside him. "Wait, listen." They fell silent, a whisper of air, a faint shift below. "Could be rats," he said, standing. "Or not." They spent the rest of the morning searching the house for a key. Drawers, floorboards, behind frames, nothing. Emma found a locked chest in their grandfather's old bedroom, but it only contained a pair of boots and a Bible missing the front pages. Luke pulled up a few loose boards in the hallway, but found only dead spiders and mouse droppings. By noon, they were both sweaty and irritable. Luke tossed the hammer onto the kitchen counter with a loud clatter. "This is a waste of time." Emma opened one of the cabinets, revealing stacks of yellowing papers, unpaid bills, notes scribbled in a shaky hand. One stood out, a torn envelope addressed to H. Callahan in faded ink. Inside was a postcard with a photograph of a tree and 2 children standing beneath it. Her eyes widened. "Luke." He turned halfway. "What?" "This tree. It's in the backyard, near the old fence line." He looked over her shoulder. "So? It's us. That's you and me in the photo. And there's something written on the back." She flipped it. The handwriting was almost illegible, but 3 words stood out clearly. "Under the roots." Luke's face changed. "You think?" "It's worth checking." They stood on the back porch, staring at the field beyond the barn. Emma pointed to the gnarled oak that had somehow survived all these years. Its roots jutted from the dry ground like bones. The swing they'd played on as kids was gone, but the rope scar remained etched into the bark. Luke sighed. "You really believe he buried a key out there?" "I believe he didn't want just anyone getting into that cellar." For the first time, Luke didn't argue. He looked toward the tree, then back at the house. "All right," he said. "Let's dig tomorrow. Sun's too high now." Emma smiled faintly. "You're not as stubborn as you used to be. Don't push your luck." That night, as they sat on the porch sharing a can of beans and a bottle of warm soda, the wind picked up. Dust swirled along the field edges. The sky turned a deep red as the sun dipped low. Emma watched the cellar door through the window. "We're not going to let this place beat us," she whispered. Luke didn't answer, but in the quiet, he didn't need to. The morning air smelled of dry grass and cracked earth. Dew clung to the edges of Emma's sneakers as she and Luke crossed the backyard, shovel in hand. The oak tree loomed above them, gnarled and wide, its roots weaving across the dirt like veins. It hadn't changed much since they were kids. Emma ran her fingers along the trunk, pausing where the swing's rope had once worn through the bark. "Here," she said, pointing to a root that arched above the ground like a rib. "This spot." Luke dug first, pushing the shovel into the earth with short, heavy motions. The ground was dry, compacted from years of drought and neglect. Emma knelt beside him, brushing away the looser dirt with her hands. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. "I don't think—" Luke started, but the sound of metal scraping wood stopped him. Emma dropped to her knees. Beneath a layer of brittle soil lay a small wooden box, barely the size of a lunch pail. The hinges were rusted, the wood swollen with age. She lifted it out carefully. Inside, wrapped in a faded red bandana, was a brass key and a leather-bound notebook. She held her breath. Luke leaned over her shoulder. "Is that—" "His handwriting," Emma said, opening the cover. "It's Grandpa's." The pages crackled as she flipped through them. The first entries were standard: weather notes, crop records, supply lists. But deeper in, the tone changed. The entries grew fragmented, cryptic. "They think I'm mad. Truth's in the cellar, but truth always has a cost. I had to protect it from them." Luke frowned. "Protect what?" Emma didn't answer. She kept reading, her eyes scanning for context. Near the middle, tucked between 2 pages, was a folded piece of parchment. She unfolded it slowly. It was a map, hand-drawn in pencil and ink, the kind kids made for treasure hunts. But this wasn't child's play. It marked specific locations: the barn, the oak tree, the well. One corner had a rough sketch of the house, and behind it a path leading into the woods. A red X was drawn at the end. Emma pointed. "He buried more." Luke took the map, tracing the path with his finger. "This doesn't lead to the cellar." "No, but it might tell us why he locked it." He looked at her. "You really think there's something dangerous down there?" She hesitated. "Not dangerous. Just something he didn't want others to find." They returned to the kitchen, laying the key, the journal, and the map on the table. Dust swirled in the morning light. The key was heavier than expected, cold even in the warmth of the room. Luke picked it up, turning it over in his palm. "It fits the padlock, doesn't it?" Emma nodded. "It must." They sat in silence. The old house creaked around them. A fly buzzed near the window. "I need to know what he meant," Emma said finally. "Why he hid all this. Why he disappeared." Luke tapped the map with his finger. "Then we follow this first. He left it for a reason." Emma looked out toward the trees. "It's going to rain soon. Then we better move fast." The clouds were already rolling in, thick and grey, crawling over the horizon like a warning. A low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. Luke grabbed the shovel again and opened the back door. Let's see what the old man wanted to take to his grave. Emma followed, the journal clutched tight to her chest. Her pulse quickened. The wind picked up. Whatever waited at the end of that path, she was ready to find it. The trail behind the barn was barely visible, overgrown with wild grass and thorny vines that tugged at Emma's jeans as she pushed forward. The clouds overhead were darker now, pressing low against the horizon, and the air had turned dense with the promise of rain. Luke followed a few steps behind, the map crumpled in his back pocket, shovel slung over one shoulder. "You sure we're going the right way?" he asked. Emma paused, glancing at the sketch in the journal again. "It's not exact, but it lines up. Look, this bend in the creek, that group of rocks. We're close." The woods had reclaimed most of the path. Trees leaned in like old men eavesdropping on a secret. Birds called high above, their cries sharp against the growing silence below. The wind had shifted, cooler now, with the scent of wet soil rising. After half an hour, they reached a clearing. The X on the map was marked just past a fallen log, under a twisted tree with bark scarred like an old wound. "This is it," Emma said, kneeling beside the roots. Luke handed her the shovel but dropped to his knees anyway. "Let me do it. You already look beat." "I'm fine. You're limping." She didn't argue. Her ankle throbbed from the earlier climb, but she hadn't wanted to slow them down. She sat on the log watching as he dug. The ground here was softer, damp from underground moisture. The shovel bit deeper with each thrust. Thunder rumbled again, closer this time. A breeze swept through the trees, bending the branches into a soft moan. Luke paused, then dug faster. A few more scoops revealed a canvas-wrapped bundle buried under a flat stone. "Got something," he muttered. He cleared the rest of the dirt and pulled it out. The canvas was brittle, mold-eaten at the corners, tied with a thin strip of leather. Inside was a small tin box, its edges worn smooth. Luke cracked it open. A brass key lay inside, longer than the first, its teeth intricately cut. Beside it, folded neatly, was another note in their grandfather's handwriting. "One opens the door. The other opens the truth. Use them wisely." Emma held the key up to the fading light. "There are 2 keys here and 2 locks. Then that cellar door isn't the end of it," Luke said. The wind picked up again, sharper now. Raindrops spattered the leaves. Emma stood, brushing dirt from her pants. "We need to get back." Luke nodded, sliding the second key into his pocket. They retraced their steps in silence, the rain steady now, soaking through their clothes as they pushed through the brush. The woods, once quiet, seemed alive with whispers. Every crack of a branch underfoot felt louder. The storm was fully awake now. When they reached the farmhouse, they were dripping, breathless. Emma's ankle gave out on the porch step, and Luke caught her just in time. "You should sit down," he said, helping her inside. She nodded, wincing. "We need to write all this down, organize what we've found." Luke dropped the keys onto the kitchen table, then sat across from her, his hair soaked, eyes dark with thought. "You think this is what Grandpa meant by the truth?" Emma wrapped her arms around herself. "I think we're only beginning to understand." Luke leaned back, the chair creaking beneath him. "And the worst part is, I'm starting to care." Emma smiled, tired but sincere. "You always did. You just forgot." Outside, the storm rolled across the plains, thunder booming like distant drums. Inside, the 2 keys gleamed in the dim light. And beneath the floor behind that locked cellar door, something waited. The rain had passed by morning. leaving behind a hush that blanketed the farm like a held breath. Damp earth clung to their boots as Luke and Emma stood once again in the kitchen, staring down at the cellar door. The key sat between them on the counter, one dull brass, the other brighter, more finely cut. "You ready?" Luke asked. Emma nodded, though her stomach was tight. "Let's do it." Luke knelt first, testing the older key in the rusted padlock. It clicked on the second try. The chains slithered to the floor with a hollow clank. Dust rose from the crack in the door as Emma stepped forward, heart pounding. She inserted the second key into a hidden latch behind the handle, barely visible unless you knew where to look. It turned with surprising ease. Luke pulled the door open. The hinges groaned like an old animal waking. A cold draught spilled upward, thick with mildew and something older. The darkness below felt deeper than a basement should allow. Emma flipped the switch on the wall. Nothing. "I'll grab a flashlight," Luke said. When he returned, the narrow beam cut through the dark, revealing steep wooden steps, warped and damp. Emma followed him down, her footfalls light but uncertain. Each step creaked, threatening to snap under their weight. The cellar wasn't large, but it was built with care. Thick stone walls, wooden shelves lining one side, a workbench on the other. Old tools hung neatly in rows. The air was cooler, heavier as if sealed for decades. "What is all this?" Luke whispered. Emma moved toward the shelves, jars of screws, glass bottles filled with unlabeled powders, faded notebooks. Everything was neatly arranged, untouched by time. But in the center of the floor was what drew them both, a trapdoor built flush into the ground. Emma knelt. There was no lock this time, only a heavy iron ring. Luke stepped closer. "Should we—" A sudden knock at the front door made them both jump. "Who the hell—" Luke muttered, already heading up. Emma stayed behind, eyes fixed on the trapdoor. Her fingers hovered above the iron ring, then pulled back. Something about it felt sacred or cursed. Upstairs, Luke opened the door to find a woman standing on the porch. Late 60s, grey hair tucked into a bun, eyes sharp beneath a wide-brimmed straw hat. She held a basket of muffins and wore an apron with faded sunflowers. "Morning," she said cheerfully. "I'm Mabel Callahan. I live over yonder past the old water tower." Luke blinked. "Callahan? By marriage. My husband was your grandfather's cousin, or nephew. Hard to keep track in this town." Emma joined them, brushing cobwebs from her sleeves. Mabel smiled. "I heard someone was back at the farm. Figured I'd stop by and say hello." They invited her in. She moved through the house like someone who'd been there before. "Haven't seen this place in years," she said, placing the basket on the table. "Shame how it fell apart." "Did you know him?" Emma asked. "Henry? Oh yes, eccentric, your grandfather. Brilliant in his way, but private. Real private." Luke folded his arms. "You ever go down in the cellar?" Mabel's smile faded. "Once, a long time ago. After that, he locked it up tight. Said some things ought to stay buried." Emma glanced at Luke. "Any idea why?" she asked. Mabel looked toward the back window. "I don't, but folks around here always figured he was hiding something. Gold, maybe. Or secrets." She turned to leave. "If you need anything, I'm just down the road." When the door closed, silence returned. Luke looked at Emma. "Gold or secrets?" Emma reached for the trapdoor again. "Maybe both." Emma couldn't sleep. The farmhouse creaked with every gust of wind, but it wasn't the noise that kept her up. It was the trapdoor, and the way Mabel's voice had shifted when she spoke of Henry's secrets. Something about that woman felt honest and scared. Emma lay awake long after Luke's breathing had gone deep and steady in the next room. By morning she was already dressed, the leather journal open beside a half-drunk mug of coffee. She flipped through pages, searching for anything they might have missed. In the margins, Henry had scrawled strange symbols, triangles, arrows, numbers, and lines that read more like riddles than reflections. "Truth rots where no light reaches. I buried what they tried to steal." She underlined the phrase with a pencil, heart thudding. Luke stumbled into the kitchen, shirt half-buttoned, hair a mess. "You've been up all night," he asked, yawning. Emma nodded. He was hiding something important, Luke. Not just family skeletons. Look at this. He scanned the page, rubbing his face. You really think he meant actual treasure? I think he meant something people would kill for. Luke poured himself coffee and sat across from her. Then, why bury it under your own house? Because he didn't trust anyone. They decided to split up. Emma would head into town and Luke would return to the cellar and go through the workbench more thoroughly. Emma wanted records, stories, anything that could shed light on what Henry might have been involved in. She took the journal with her, tucked into her satchel. In town, the Ellsworth County Records Office was a brick building sandwiched between a diner and an antique store. The air inside was cool, tinged with old paper and lemon cleaner. Emma spoke to a clerk, an older woman named Judy, who lit up when she heard the name Callahan. Henry Callahan. Oh, honey, that man was a legend around here. Emma smiled politely. Do you have any property records, maybe even incident reports? Judy nodded. Follow me. They sat at a microfilm viewer, Emma scrolling through decades of newspaper clippings and county records. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Land disputes, crop sales, drought notices. But then she saw it. A 1977 article with the headline, Local Farmer Questioned in Missing Artifacts Case. Emma froze. According to the piece, federal agents had once visited the Callahan farm after anonymous tips linked Henry to a string of rare item disappearances from the Kansas State Museum storage site. Nothing had been proven, no charges filed, but Henry had refused to let them search the property. Judy glanced over. Weird story, huh? My husband swore Henry was smuggling Civil War relics, said he was obsessed. Emma's mind raced. Could that be it? Artifacts? Historical items hidden away in a cellar for decades? She thanked Judy and left, her hands trembling. Back at the farmhouse, Luke was crouched over the workbench, wiping grime off the tools when Emma burst in. I found something, she said out of breath. He turned, eyes sharp. So did I. From behind his back, he pulled a small wooden box, cracked open to reveal a bundle of letters. Each was addressed to H.C. in the same delicate handwriting. All were signed by someone named Arthur Bellamy. Who's Bellamy? Emma asked. Luke shrugged. No idea, but these letters go back to the 60s. They talk about trading items, preserving history, keeping things away from unworthy hands. One even mentions a buyer from Europe. Emma dropped her bag and pulled out the article. He was under investigation for stolen artifacts. Bellamy might have been his partner. They stared at each other. What the hell did Grandpa get himself into? Luke whispered. Emma's voice was low, steady. Something bigger than either of us thought. Thunder echoed again in the distance, even though the sky outside was clear. The trapdoor creaked open with the same groaning protest as the cellar door had days earlier. This time Luke and Emma were ready. Flashlights, gloves, a pry bar, even bottled water. The weight of discovery settled heavy between them, unspoken but thick in the air. They descended one after the other, the old wooden ladder groaning beneath their steps. Beneath the trapdoor was a second, smaller chamber carved into the earth. Its walls were packed clay reinforced with timbers. It was cold and damp, the air dense with the scent of metal and earth. Against the back wall sat a large iron safe, its surface etched with age and faint initials. H.C. Emma stepped closer. It's real. Luke ran a hand along the metal, the lock gleaming under the beam of his flashlight. It had 3 dials, each with numbers from 0 to 39. We need a combination, he said, no way around it. Emma pulled out the journal again, flipping through it with urgency. There has to be something, a pattern, a date. They sat on the cellar floor, dirt caking their jeans. Emma read every margin note, every odd phrase Henry had jotted. Luke paced. Time slipped by. The tension pressed against their ribs. Then she saw it. Wait, here, this entry. She pointed to a line that read, To find truth, remember the book and the verse that opened my eyes. Luke blinked. The Bible, Emma nodded. The one we found upstairs, missing the front pages. I thought it was nothing, but maybe the verse is still marked. They climbed out and ran to the bedroom, Emma limping slightly. She pulled the Bible from the chest, flipping through the brittle pages until she found it, an underlined passage in faint pencil at the corner of the New Testament. Luke read aloud, Matthew 6:21, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Emma stared at the number. 6:21. 3 numbers, Luke muttered. That's only 2. She scanned the page again. In the margin, Henry had scribbled the number 33 beside the verse. Luke raised an eyebrow. You think that's it? It's the only thing we have. They returned to the hidden chamber. Luke knelt before the safe and carefully turned the dials. 33. 6. 21. He hesitated, then twisted the handle. A loud click echoed through the small room. Emma gasped. The safe swung open. Inside, stacks of cloth bundles lined the bottom, each wrapped in oilskin labeled with dates and initials. Luke pulled one out, peeling it open. Inside were rare coins, some gold, some silver, all in pristine condition. Another bundle held ornate documents, old maps, handwritten letters in French and Latin. Holy, Luke whispered. This is worth a fortune. Emma knelt beside him, unwrapping another bundle. A stack of currency, old US bills marked with rare seals and serial numbers. She held one up, heart racing. This is historical. Some of these aren't even in circulation anymore. They belong in a museum. Luke sat back staring at the hall. You think this is what he was hiding all these years? Not just hiding, Emma said softly. Preserving. She picked up one of the French letters and read a few lines. This isn't just money. This is provenance. These items tell a story, maybe one nobody else ever heard. Luke leaned against the wall, running a hand through his hair. So what now? Emma looked at him, her eyes full of wonder and concern. Now, we decide what kind of legacy we want to leave. His secrets are ours now. Luke looked back at the open safe, then at his sister. And for the first time since arriving, he felt something shift inside him. The safe sat open like a wound, revealing decades of secrets folded neatly into silence. Luke reached in again, his hands trembling just slightly now, and retrieved a smaller, more ornate bundle. Unlike the others, this one was wrapped in deep blue velvet and tied with a silk ribbon, still vivid despite the age. Emma's breath caught in her throat. That looks different. Luke untied the ribbon slowly, careful not to tear the fabric. Inside, stacked precisely and sealed in thin wax sleeves, were old US banknotes, crisp, pristine, untouched by time. The colors were muted but intact, deep greens, bold blacks, and red seals with serial numbers he'd never seen before. Emma leaned in, eyes wide. Those are 20s from the 1920s, maybe even earlier. Series of 1918, Luke said, reading one of the seals. Federal Reserve banknotes. These are insanely rare. He pulled out one with an eagle printed across the back and held it to the light. You don't find these, not like this, not outside a vault or a museum. Emma took one carefully, fingers brushing the smooth paper. How did he even get these, and this many? Luke didn't answer. He stood pacing the cellar slowly. His mind buzzed with the implications. Do you have any idea how much this is worth? One of these could go for tens of thousands. There's at least 50 in here. Emma stayed kneeling, her voice calm. It's more than money, you know that, right? He turned sharply. No, Emma. That's exactly what it is. Money, real, rare, clean money. The kind that changes lives. She stood. And if we sell it all, what's left? A story no one gets to hear. A life erased. He scoffed. We could split it. You write your little book and I get out of debt, easy. Don't reduce this to numbers, Luke, she snapped. You saw the letters, the articles. He didn't hide this just for wealth. He was protecting something, maybe even redeeming himself. Or maybe he was hoarding stolen property in his basement, Luke shot back. This isn't some noble crusade. It's a payout. Emma's voice trembled. I'm not saying we can't use it. I'm saying we can't rush to sell it to the highest bidder without understanding what it means. Luke rubbed his temples. You're still the idealist. And you're still afraid to feel anything unless it comes with a price tag. Silence swelled between them. Dust floated in the beam of the flashlight like ash. Emma stepped closer. Look at me. This, she gestured to the velvet-wrapped notes, this could be our grandfather's redemption, or his greatest sin. We owe it to ourselves to find out. Luke didn't speak. His jaw tightened. I'm not selling anything until we know the whole story, she said, her voice steady now. Not one note. He looked away, then back at the safe. The weight of it pressed into his chest. Part of him wanted to walk out, leave her to the ghosts and riddles. But another part, the part he hadn't listened to in years, whispered that maybe she was right. Luke exhaled, long and slow. Okay, we wait, Emma nodded. Thank you. They wrapped the notes again, sealing the velvet bundle and placing it back inside the safe. The door closed with a metallic finality, but the decision didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the start of something heavier. Luke turned off the flashlight and together they climbed out of the cellar. The sky was shifting again, clouds stretching wide like fingers across the plains. Neither of them said it aloud, but they both knew. The world outside the farm was about to come knocking. 3 days after they locked the safe again, a letter arrived. It was thick, cream-colored and delivered by hand, left on the front steps without a knock. Luke found it while drinking his morning coffee, the envelope damp with early dew. He read the return address twice. William R. Callahan, Esq. Tulsa. Okay. Emma looked up from the dining table as he entered, the letter clutched in his hand like a warning. Another lawyer? Apparently we have family in Oklahoma we've never heard of, he said, tossing it down. She opened it carefully, eyes scanning the contents. The tone was formal, but the message was sharp. A claim is being filed contesting the inheritance of the Callahan estate. The petitioner, William R. Callahan, asserts a more recent will exists, naming him as the primary beneficiary. Emma's chest tightened. He's saying Grandpa left everything to him. Luke rubbed his jaw. And he wants what's in the cellar. They sat in silence. Outside, the sky had turned pale gray, the first signs of another storm forming on the horizon. By noon, they were in a lawyer's office in Wichita. The man they hired, Robert Kane, was a quiet, no-nonsense type with a clean desk and a sharper mind. He read the letter, then leaned back. This is serious. If that alternate will exists and is valid, it could upend everything. Emma frowned. But we have the original, the one Grady gave us. Kane nodded. Which will hold, unless theirs is more recent and legally executed. Then the estate goes into dispute. Luke crossed his arms. And the contents of the safe? Kane hesitated. Depends on how the estate is classified. If the items are considered part of the property, they're included. If your grandfather specifically excluded them in writing, we might have a case. Emma shook her head. But he didn't. He hid them. Kane gave her a measured look. Then we'd better prepare for a fight. The next morning, the story broke. Someone, likely William, had tipped off a regional blog about the hidden fortune in a Kansas farmhouse. By afternoon, the article had been picked up by local TV stations. The headlines were irresistible. Twins discover millions in lost currency hidden beneath family farm. Emma read it on her phone in stunned silence. Luke stared out the window. They're going to come now. Reporters. Treasure hunters, opportunists. And they did. By evening, a car pulled into the driveway. Then another. Neighbors Emma had never met knocked politely, pretending to check in. A man from a collectibles magazine left his card under the door. Someone even tried to fly a drone over the property. Luke paced the porch like a soldier on patrol. We should have kept our mouths shut. We didn't say anything, Emma replied. Doesn't matter, someone did. Later that night, Luke sat alone on the steps, staring at the gravel. Emma joined him, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. You think we'll lose it? He asked. She was quiet for a moment. I don't know, but I'm not giving up without a fight. He glanced at her. You were right. From the beginning, this isn't just about money. No, she said, it's about what we do with it. They watched the sky churn above them, lightning flickering behind thick clouds. Inside, the safe waited, still sealed. Outside, the storm, both legal and literal, was just getting started. The article spread faster than wildfire across dry prairie grass. Within 48 hours, Ellsworth was buzzing like it hadn't in decades. The sleepy town, once known only for its grain elevator and summer rodeo, was now the center of whispered speculation and sidelong glances. People spoke their grandfather's name with a mix of curiosity and suspicion, piecing together stories that didn't always match. Luke felt the shift the first time he stopped at the hardware store. A clerk he'd never met leaned across the counter, eyes gleaming. "So, how much is it really worth? A couple 100,000? Million?" Luke kept his tone flat. "Don't believe everything you hear." But the questions followed him. At the diner, strangers tried to strike up conversations. At the gas station, a man asked whether he planned to auction the land. Luke drove back to the farmhouse with his jaw tight, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Emma, meanwhile, sought answers in quieter places. She visited the library, where old county histories lined the shelves, and spoke with elders who still remembered Henry Callahan. Most recalled him as eccentric but generous. Yet others lowered their voices when describing him, guarded, secretive, always working late at night in the barn or cellar. One afternoon, she found herself on the porch of Mabel Callahan's house, sipping iced tea while cicadas screamed from the trees. The older woman studied her with sharp eyes. "You've stirred something in this town," Mabel said. Henry never wanted the world digging into his business. He believed some things should stay in the family. Emma leaned forward. "Do you think he meant to protect us, or to protect himself?" Mabel hesitated, then set her glass down. "Both, maybe. During the drought, he gave food to families who had nothing, but he never said where it came from. Folks wondered if he had a second income, something not entirely honest. Still, no one asked too many questions. He was respected, even when he wasn't trusted." That night, Emma shared what she'd learned with Luke. "So he played the part of hero and smuggler at the same time," Luke muttered. "Figures." Emma shook her head. "It's more complicated than that. He cared about this community. Maybe he wanted to keep what he found here so it could help others one day." Luke scoffed. "Funny way of helping, locking it in a cellar for 30 years. "Maybe he was waiting for us," she said softly. Luke didn't reply, but the words stuck with him. The following weekend, the town gathered at the old church for a meeting called by the mayor. Rumors had grown too loud to ignore. Inside the hot, crowded room, voices rose and tangled, some demanding the collection be donated to the county, others insisting the twins had every right to keep it. Luke sat stiff in the front pew, arms crossed, eyes flicking between the faces. Emma took notes, her stomach twisting as she listened. Finally, a frail man with white hair and a cane rose slowly from the back. Earl Thompson, one of the oldest residents, cleared his throat. "I knew Henry," he said, voice rough but steady. "He wasn't perfect, but when my family was starving in '38, he showed up with bread and canned meat. Never asked for payment. Never told us where it came from. I'll tell you this, he didn't hoard for himself. He held on to things because he thought someday they'd matter." The room went quiet. Emma felt her eyes sting. Luke shifted, uncomfortable but thoughtful. Later, outside beneath the street lamps, Emma turned to her brother. "We can't just take this and run. If we keep it all, we become the villains of this story." Luke looked at her, conflicted. "And what? You want to hand it over to the same people who are already tearing us apart?" "No," she said firmly. "I want us to choose, to give something back, to honor him in a way that makes sense." Luke didn't answer right away, but the doubt that once filled his eyes had changed into something else, something closer to possibility. Luke slammed the truck door harder than he meant to, gravel crunching under his boots as he stormed toward the porch. Emma was already inside, papers spread across the kitchen table, her pen scratching against the page. She looked up when he entered, her face pale but determined. "You told them," he said, voice low but sharp. Emma set the pen down. "Told who what?" "The mayor. The church. Half the damn town. You stood there and practically promised them a piece of what we found." She inhaled slowly. "I didn't promise anything. I said we should give something back. That's different." Luke's jaw tightened. Different? You just gave every scavenger within 50 miles the idea that they deserve a cut. Her voice cracked with frustration. And maybe they do. Luke, you heard Earl. Grandpa helped people when no one else would. If we hoard this for ourselves, we're not honoring him. We're betraying him. He leaned over the table, fists pressing into the wood. I'm not betraying anyone. I'm protecting what's ours. Do you know how fast money disappears when you start handing it out? One bill here, one donation there until there's nothing left. We could finally have a future, our future, but you'd rather throw it into the wind to make yourself feel righteous. Emma stood, her chair scraping back. This isn't about righteousness, it's about meaning. Money without purpose is just paper. The silence between them throbbed. Outside, cicadas screamed in the tall grass. Inside, their grandfather's journal lay open, pages curling like old secrets trying to escape. Luke's chest rose and fell hard. You know what? Maybe I was wrong to come here. Maybe I should have signed the deed over and walked away before you dragged me into this mess. Emma's throat tightened, but she forced her voice steady. If you want to leave, then leave. But don't pretend you don't care. Because I've seen the way you look at this place, at the safe, at me when I talk about what Grandpa meant. You care, Luke. You always have. You're just afraid of it. He turned, pacing toward the door, but something in her words stopped him cold. He didn't look back. His voice came rough. You don't know what it's like to live your whole life fixing other people's mistakes. To watch everyone else build something while you're just trying to stay above water. This was supposed to be my chance to finally get out. Emma's eyes blurred with tears. She picked up one of the letters they'd found, her hands trembling. Grandpa wrote this to himself. He said, I lost more than money chasing the past. I want my grandchildren to find more than I ever did. I want them to find each other. Luke turned slowly. His eyes flicked to the letter, then to her face. Something cracked inside him, a weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying for years. Emma's voice softened. Maybe the real inheritance isn't what's in the safe. Maybe it's what we do with it together. Luke dropped into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time in years, Emma saw her brother not as the hardened man he'd become, but as the boy who once shared secrets with her under that oak tree. He lifted his head, his voice low. If we do this your way, if we give something back, what do we keep for us? Emma wiped her eyes. Enough to live. Enough to breathe. Enough to make sure Grandpa didn't hide all this for nothing. Luke nodded slowly, like the fight had drained out of him, leaving only exhaustion and maybe a little hope. For the first time, they were closer to agreement. But the hardest choice was still ahead. Morning sunlight streamed through the broken shutters, painting the farmhouse kitchen in fractured beams. Emma sat at the table with the journal open, tracing the faded handwriting with her fingertip. Luke shuffled in, still groggy, but calmer than the night before. He poured himself coffee, then leaned against the counter, watching her. You were serious about sharing it, weren't you? He asked. Emma looked up. I was, but not in the way you think. I don't want to just hand it over and lose control. I want to choose where it goes, how it helps. Luke pulled out a chair and sat. And what do we keep? She smiled faintly. Enough to secure our lives, enough to start fresh. But the rest, I think it belongs to more than just us. For once, Luke didn't argue. He rubbed his palms together slowly, like warming to the idea. So how do we even begin? Emma pulled out a list she had scribbled. Step 1, appraisal. We can't decide anything until we know exactly what it's worth. Step 2, preservation. Some of these bills and coins are delicate. They'll crumble if we mishandle them. And step 3, decide what to sell, what to donate, and what to keep. Luke smirked. You already mapped it out. Someone had to, she teased. That afternoon, they contacted a respected numismatics expert in Kansas City, arranging for a discreet visit. The appraiser, a cautious man named Dr. Harris, confirmed what they suspected. The collection was worth millions. He handled each item with reverence, shaking his head at the rarity and pristine condition. You understand, he said, Pieces like these are as much history as they are money. Some collectors would pay anything to lock them away, but museums would fight just as hard to display them. On the drive back, Luke gripped the wheel tighter than usual. So, museums, huh? Emma nodded. Imagine Grandpa's story told through what he left behind. Imagine schools bringing kids here to learn about the Depression, the droughts, the resilience of families like ours. Luke frowned. And you think the town would support that? They already care, Emma said. They want to feel like this history belongs to them too. The idea grew between them. By the end of the week, they were drafting plans, not just to give away artifacts, but to restore the farm itself. They met with the mayor, who cautiously supported turning the property into a cultural center. Volunteers signed up to help repair the barn. Local carpenters offered their labor at a discount, seeing opportunity in a project that could bring attention and pride back to Ellsworth. Luke surprised Emma most of all. He suggested converting the old barn into a workshop. Not just for me, he explained, but for kids who don't have anyone to teach them. Engines, carpentry, welding. Skills that matter. Emma's eyes lit up. That's perfect. It's exactly the kind of thing Grandpa would have wanted. Something useful, lasting. Day by day, progress began. Roof shingles were replaced, windows scrubbed and mended. The smell of fresh lumber mixed with the scent of turned soil, and the farm started to look alive again. Emma recorded everything, her journal filling with notes for the book she planned to write, part history, part memoir, part redemption tale. One evening, as the sun set in bands of pink and gold, Emma and Luke stood by the oak tree, the same one where they'd unearthed the key. He really did leave us more than treasure, Emma whispered. Luke nodded, hands resting in his pockets. Yeah. He left us a chance to build something that outlasts us. For the first time, Luke didn't sound bitter. He sounded hopeful. And Emma, looking at the farmhouse glowing in the twilight, believed him. The farm no longer looked abandoned. Fresh paint brightened the porch. New shingles caught the sunlight on the roof, and the barn's wide doors stood open, inviting rather than warning. What once felt like a tomb of secrets was slowly becoming a place of gathering, of laughter, of second chances. Emma walked the path from the house to the barn, her notebook tucked under her arm. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air, mixed with bursts of conversation from volunteers. She paused to watch a group of teenagers unloading scrap metal under Luke's direction. He stood tall, sleeves rolled up, a pencil tucked behind his ear. "Careful with that carburetor," he called. "It's not heavy, but it'll cut you if you're sloppy." The kids listened, even laughed when he cracked a rare joke. Emma smiled. This was the brother she remembered from childhood, protective, steady, capable of earning respect without demanding it. When he noticed her, Luke wiped his forehead with a rag. "Checking up on me?" She shook her head. "Just proud." He chuckled. "Don't start. These kids need tough love, not speeches." "Maybe," Emma said softly, "but they're getting more than mechanics from you. You're teaching them to believe in themselves." Luke rolled his eyes but didn't argue. Inside the barn, the transformation was striking. The old hayloft had been cleared, wooden beams polished and reinforced. Workbenches lined the walls, each stocked with tools either donated or salvaged. A chalkboard hung near the entrance, scrawled with lesson plans, basics of engine repair, welding safety, tool maintenance. Emma scribbled notes for her book as she moved through the space. Every detail mattered. The smell of oil and cedar, the buzz of saws, the nervous excitement on the kids' faces. This wasn't just restoration. It was rebirth. Later that afternoon, she met with the mayor and a small committee in the refurbished living room of the farmhouse. They discussed logistics for turning the main house into a cultural center. Local historians wanted to curate an exhibit with some of the artifacts from the cellar. Teachers hoped to bring students for field trips. Even the library expressed interest in hosting lectures about the Callahan family legacy. Emma spoke with calm conviction. "This place tells a story that goes beyond us. It's about survival, generosity, and choices that ripple across generations. We can't change how Grandpa acquired everything, but we can decide what his legacy becomes now." The mayor nodded. "You've got the town behind you. This project might be the best thing to happen here in years." When the meeting ended, Emma stepped outside. The sun was dipping low, painting the fields in hues of gold and lavender. She saw Luke by the oak tree, tightening a new rope swing he'd tied for the neighborhood kids. "Thought we could give them something we never had long enough," he said when she joined him. Emma's throat tightened. He'd like that. Luke tested the swing, giving it a firm push. "Feels solid." "Should hold." They stood in silence for a while, listening to the creak of the rope, the distant chatter from the barn, the hum of crickets beginning their evening chorus. Finally, Emma pulled out the last page of their grandfather's journal, one she had avoided reading until now. In faded ink, Henry had written, "If they find what I could not, let them remember it is not gold that binds us. It is the blood, the forgiveness, the love we owe each other. Let them do better than I did." Emma folded the page carefully. "He wanted us to find each other again." Luke nodded, his voice rough. Guess he got his wish. And for the first time, the farm felt whole. Not because of what they had found, but because of what they were building together. Months later, the farmhouse no longer felt like a burden. It pulsed with life. Fresh paint, steady repairs, and laughter drifting from the barn had transformed it into a place of belonging. Where there had once been silence and rot, there was now the sound of hammers, voices, and hope. Emma stood on the porch, her manuscript resting on her lap. The book was nearly finished, pages filled with their grandfather's story and their own journey of discovery. She tapped the cover gently, the weight of it both humbling and freeing. From the barn came Luke's voice, guiding a group of teenagers through an engine teardown. His words were sharp, practical, but underneath them Emma heard the patience he'd once reserved only for her. She smiled, watching him from afar. The brother who had once wanted nothing more than to sell the farm and leave was now its anchor. A car rolled up the gravel drive, cameras peeking out the windows. A film crew stepped out, led by a woman with a notepad. She greeted Emma warmly. "We're here to start filming the documentary. Your story's already been called one of the most fascinating discoveries of the decade." Emma laughed softly, still unused to the attention. "Just remember, it's not about us. It's about what we found, and what it means for everyone." They filmed for days, capturing the cellar, the barn, the oak tree where the first key had been buried. Emma narrated passages from her book. Luke demonstrated lessons in his workshop. Neighbors stopped by to share stories of Henry Callahan, some fond, some conflicted, all pieces of a man more complex than legend allowed. One evening, after the crew packed up, Emma and Luke sat on the porch steps with mugs of coffee. The summer air was warm, filled with the hum of cicadas and the smell of fresh-cut hay. "You ever think about how different this could have gone?" Luke asked. Emma nodded. "If we'd just sold it all? Yeah. We'd probably be richer in the short term, but emptier." He looked out across the fields, now green and thriving. "I used to think money was the only way out. Now, I don't want out. I want to stay." Emma's chest tightened with emotion. "Me too." They fell into comfortable silence, broken only when Emma pulled out the final page of their grandfather's journal, the one she had read under the oak tree weeks before. She read it aloud again, her voice steady in the fading light. "If they find what I could not, let them remember it is not gold that binds us. It is the blood, the forgiveness, the love we owe each other. Let them do better than I did." Luke swallowed hard, blinking against the weight of the words. "Guess we finally understood him." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder. "And we did better. Together." The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving streaks of red and gold. The cellar, once a place of secrets, had become the foundation for something far greater, a legacy of unity, choice, and renewal. Emma turned to Luke with a smile. "Before we wrap this up, don't forget, if this story moved you, make sure to subscribe and stay with us for more incredible real-life stories that remind us how much history can shape our future." Luke chuckled, shaking his head at her sudden seriousness. "Still the teacher. And you're still the mechanic," she teased. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the farm, mingling with the rustle of the fields. Emma looked back toward the cellar one last time. It no longer scared her. Instead, It felt like a reminder that some doors, when unlocked, don't just reveal the past, they open the way forward. And if you want to keep going, she added, her voice gentle but firm, click the video on your screen now to discover the true story of a man who found a buried suitcase behind his garage, and what he did with it will surprise you. The screen of their story faded, but their legacy was just beginning.